Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is to take a stack of complex sources, extract the vital knowledge, and deliver the insights you need to be truly well-informed.
Today we are doing a deep dive into an incredibly charged story. It's one that connects a personal family tragedy, a really public one, directly to the inner workings of the National Institutes of Health.
Yeah, it's a story behind a pretty explosive headline, the terminal diagnosis of journalist Tatiana Schlossberg, who is President John F. Kennedy's granddaughter, and her public confrontation with her cousin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., over federal science funding.
So for our sources, we're dissecting her personal essay from The New Yorker, which is just, it's incredibly powerful.
It's raw, and we're pairing that with the hard clinical data from the American Cancer Society on her specific and very rare disease.
Right, that's acute myeloid leukemia with inversion 3, or AML-NV3. And we're also looking at fact checks and reports on specific funding cuts at the NIH and the CDC to ground this all.
So the mission is clear. We need to understand the medical reality of this disease, AML-NV3, and then analyze the policy shifts she was criticizing.
And the very real, concrete consequences of those cuts on cancer research.
Okay, let's unpack this. The personal story starts with a timeline that is so sharp, so dramatic, it's almost hard to believe.
It really is.
So Tatiana Schlossberg, she's known for being incredibly fit. A 35-year-old journalist running miles in Central Park, long swims, and in May 2024, she's in the hospital for a happy reason. She had just given birth to her second child.
And that's the moment, the exact moment that joy turns into just instant crisis. About 10 minutes after the delivery, her doctors see that her blood counts are, they're dangerously off.
And the timing is so critical here. What they found was something called hyperleukocytosis,
Which is a staggering, completely life-threatening overproduction of white blood cells, an immediate emergency.
When you look at the clinical data, the numbers are just shocking. For a healthy person, a normal white blood cell count is somewhere between, 4,000 and 11,000 cells per microliter?
Right, that's the typical range.
What was her count?
It was 131,000.
Wow.
Yeah. You're looking at a system in complete aggressive failure. That's more than 10 times the upper limit of normal.
It's a sign of a really aggressive, fast-moving cancer.
And the specific type they found wasn't just any AML. It came with a much, much graver prognosis from the start.
That's right. It was acute myeloid leukemia with a very rare genetic abnormality.
Called Inversion 3, or AML-NV3. And to really get the severity of this, you have to understand this mutation is only found in about 1.4 to 2% of all AML patients.
So it's exceptionally rare.
Exceptionally rare, and it's a known marker for very high risk.
So just having that NV3 mutation, that alone tells doctors this is going to be a much harder fight.
Exactly. It puts you in the highest risk group right from diagnosis. It signals that the cancer is going to have primary resistance to standard frontline treatments.
They knew from the get-go they were facing a highly treatment-resistant leukemia.
A refractory leukemia.
And then there's the timing of her essay. She published it on November 22, 2025.
Not an accident, that date.
No, that's the 62nd anniversary of her grandfather, JFK's, assassination. It explicitly creates the symbolic link between her private health battle and her family's very public history of tragedy.
It's incredibly powerful.
So, facing a cancer this aggressive, her treatment journey was just relentless. We're talking multiple brutal rounds of chemo at Memorial Sloan Kettering.
And then not one, but two separate stem cell transplants.
The first from her sister, the second from a totally unrelated donor. She was throwing the absolute best, most aggressive science available at this disease.
And this brings us right to the science of why AML-NV3 is so lethal.
Right. It has to do with something called pathological fusion genes. You see terms like granddaughter2.evi1. What does that actually mean for a patient? I think it can sound a little abstract.
That's a great question. The best way to think about it is, your genes are like instruction manuals for your cells. The inversion 3 abnormality is like taking two totally separate manuals, say one for grow and one for stop growing, and literally taping them together. It creates a miswired pathological switch.
So it's just sending out the wrong signals constantly.
Exactly. These new fusion genes, like granddaughter2.mecom, they just hijack the cell's machinery. They make it impossible for cells to mature or die like they're supposed to. The cancer just proliferates unchecked, and it resists any kind of chemical attack.
It's like a biological lock that standard chemo just can't pick. No wonder she needed such extreme therapies like CAR-T.
Precisely. She was relying on chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy, CAR-RT, which is the absolute vanguard of targeted cancer treatment.
And this is really the pivot point in her whole essay. She uses this fact, her reliance on this therapy, to make a political argument.
A very pointed one. She specifically wrote that CAR-T was, and I'm quoting here, developed over many decades with millions of dollars of government funding.
It's a really powerful way to frame it. Her survival, day to day, was directly enabled by public investment in science.
Absolutely. And it goes even deeper. I mean, she points out that one of the basic chemotherapy drugs she got, cytarabine, it owes its existence to a discovery involving an ocean animal, a sponge found in the Caribbean.
A sea sponge. That's amazing.
And that discovery was only possible because of government research funding decades ago. It's a reminder that all modern medicine, it starts with public investment in just basic science.
That detail is genuinely fascinating. It just underscores that every option she had, from the old school chemo to this futuristic cell therapy, it all stands on the shoulders of continuous public funding.
But despite all of it, the aggressive approach, the dual transplants, the advanced therapy, the grim reality ultimately set in.
After all these cycles of remission and relapse, her physician gave her the final devastating prognosis.
Yeah. He told her the science they had could only keep her alive for a year, maybe.
And that's the moment her private, life-and-death struggle explodes into a public political challenge, and it's directed right at her own family.
The gravity of that prognosis is what made her critique of her cousin, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., land with such incredible force.
And she didn't hold back.
Not at all. She publicly called him an embarrassment to me and the rest of my immediate family. She framed her entire argument around her reliance on the public science that she believed he was actively dismantling.
So let's talk about the specific cuts, because this goes way beyond just rhetoric. There are documented figures about what happened at the NIH.
The reports were widespread, and they were confirmed. His administration reportedly cut nearly $500 million that was earmarked for research into mRNA vaccines.
And that technology is crucial, not just for viruses, but for cancer too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It has enormous promise for targeted cancer therapies. It's considered a major pathway for the next generation of treatments.
And it wasn't just that one area. The cuts to the NIH they were massive.
They were billions slashed from the NIH budget.
Yeah.
And that translated into the termination or freezing of around 2,500 grants. And a research letter in JAMA Internal Medicine confirmed the scope of this. Grant terminations affected 383 clinical trials.
Impacting how many people?
Over 74,000 participants. Patients who are relying on that continuous scientific work.
Now, what makes these cuts so catastrophic, especially in a field like cancer research, isn't just the dollar amount, it's the interruption, isn't it?
That is the crucial point that people miss. Translational science-moving discoveries from a lab to a patient is a continuous process. You can't just pause it. When a grant is frozen, even for a short time, the science often just dies.
How so? What actually happens?
Well, think about the mechanics. Labs run on specialized cell lines, on animal models, on expensive chemicals with expiration dates. If the funding stops, you can't feed the cell cultures.
And they die.
They die, and some are irreplaceable. And then there's the regulatory approvals from IRBs. They have timelines. If your trial is halted, the approvals expire. You have to start the whole expensive regulatory process all over again.
So it's not a pause button, it's a wrecking ball.
It really is. Scientists testified that the interruption itself effectively killed their work. You can't go back and collect missed data from a year ago. You lose your best researchers who have to go find other funding.
Which is why PolitiFact rated his claim that they were not cutting science.
And it's pants on fire. Because the harm from the interruption is just devastating, especially for diseases where every single month counts.
And the critique wasn't just about money. It was also about the integrity of scientific communication, specifically at the CDC.
That's right. Schlossberg and former CDC officials pointed to documented changes on the CDC's vaccine safety webpage made under Secretary Kennedy's oversight.
What did it say?
The page was altered to claim the statement, "Vaccines do not cause autism," is not an evidence-based claim. And it suggested studies supporting a link have been ignored.
And the critics said this wasn't the result of a normal scientific review.
Exactly. Former officials said it bypassed the rigorous clearance process, suggesting the change was ideological, not data-driven, which, for patients who rely on the CDC's credibility, that erodes trust.
And she drew another terrifying line, connecting the administration's ideology directly to the care that saved her life after childbirth.
She did. She highlighted that the drug misoprostol was critical in saving her life from a postpartum hemorrhage.
Okay.
And then she noted her fear that this very same drug is under review at her cousin's urging because it's also used in medication abortion. Her fear was that his ideological goals could endanger access to a life-saving drug for women everywhere.
The family division here is just profound. It moves from private grief into a very public political split.
It's a clear dynastic fracture. Her immediate family, including her brother, Jack Schlossberg, who is now running for Congress, they publicly amplified her essay. They supported it.
Turning it into an official statement against her cousin's policies.
Yes, it just underscores the immense political weight her struggle carried.
So when you step back, what does this all mean? Her tragic, intensely personal story is this visceral illustration of how abstract policy decisions about funding the NIH, about the integrity of the CDC,
Have direct, brutal consequences for real patients fighting these horrible diseases like AML and V3.
her life was extended by breakthroughs like CAR-RT, a therapy built on decades of continuous publicly funded work.
And yet, just as she's reaching the end of her options, the very pipeline that's supposed to deliver the next generation of treatments, her only hope, was facing deliberate disruption.
Which leaves us with a really important question for you to think about. If a patient with the visibility, the resources, and the access of the Kennedy family struggles to defeat a rare cancer, even with the best science public funding can offer,
What fate awaits the thousands of other, less visible patients? The ones in those 383 clinical trials when that crucial continuous funding is just arbitrarily suspended or canceled? The ability of science to defeat these diseases relies on relentless, uninterrupted progress. Disrupting that isn't just cutting a budget line. It's closing the door on the future for patients who are racing against a biological clock. The true cost isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in eliminated chances for survival.